Hello, everyone. Sorry to disappoint if you're expecting Tom Oxley, but I'm also another Peter filling in, so that's me. Where's the other Peter? There you go. Yeah, we're filling in. Yes, so we're from Synchron, and like many people here, we're trying to capture the original source of cognition itself instead of trying to teach models from downstream, things that are downstream from the cognitive events. So namely, we're trying to capture as much neural dynamics as possible. And the reason why I want to do this is, first of all, very practical, is if we believe that if we have to do this, then we can effectively give more options to our patients. They can decode more stuff out of their brain, and they can transmit more of their intents to restore their autonomy. So our patients are paralyzed patients. But of course, in the future, if we're able to do this, this means that we have created an entity that has these cognitive primitives that we can tap into. So if we can tap into it, then we can utilize them, and I'm sure that has huge benefits for AI, robotics, and whatever else it could be. So, to put it very simply put, is, will the better lesson apply to neural data? And it seems like there's some stuff coming out that seems to be so, and of course we're doing that. But this is a lovely idea, so we want to get more and more data, but I want to do some quick gut check and use this brain trust as a field to make sure that we're stepping in the right direction. And that's what I want to propose for the discussion to happen after this session. So you can see that AI slop that I said back of the envelope, image generation, and it's missed some letters, but let's say, very roughly, we want to get to a data scale that is at the current LLM scales. So even Llama 4 is at 30 trillion tokens. And to very roughly speaking, brain data is in spatiotemporal, so we've got to take into consideration time. Even if you take 10 milliseconds, which is pretty coarse and generous, to be honest, as a neural token. Now, tokenization in brain space is, of course, a loaded term, but let's just assume this. And we have a magical brain implant that we want to, that people are willing to receive, and we can record data. So let's say generously, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, 52 weeks of the year. That means you need to have 40,000 years of data to collect the 30 trillion tokens. So, which means we have to bring this down, then we have to get as many people as possible. So if we're able to have 10,000 users, then this number comes down to 4. But we all know we're probably going to need a lot more data than language or text, because the SNR is much lower. So all this to say is that we need a method that is inherently scalable. And second gut check that we want to do is the information scale. So if physics was my friend and I knew some secrets, I would record from every single neuron in the brain and derive everything that I need from that point on. But unfortunately, I don't know any new physics, so I want to really pick at which particular information that I'm after. So I want to decode cognitive informations, motor control, reasoning, and currently it seems that even recording from surface areas, so those micro-ECOG arrays, we can begin to study complex cognition and motor control and even speech decoding. And it's beautifully laid out by Eddie's work. Of course, you can decode the same information directly from spikes, but you can categorically get the same information from something like ECOG or micro-ECOG. So choosing which dimension of information that we choose to collect is going to determine what type of interface that we need that we can scale to millions of people. And of course, that's not only that. We're trying to record from people. We want them to engage in the thing that we want to record. So we want them to engage in the world, actually engage in cognitive tasks, live in the real world, engage in the full human emotions and complex tasks. So we can stay in the clinical settings. That's going to give us very high SNR data for particular approach that we're trying to do. We can now take that out to research session settings, study something particular, a particular cognitive mechanism of reasoning or decision making per se. But if we truly want to embody and model general cognitive capabilities, then we need to get into the real world. People need to be doing real things that you and I always do with these implants in, so that the data that we collect has embedded in it that cognitive information. So then this comes down to what is the killer app that will allow the patients, will encourage the patients to actually receive this, and then utilize the device in this real world scenario where they're engaging in these cognitive activities. So it seems like there's this 3 flywheel effect happening. We need the interface to have the coverage, the entire brain coverage. We don't want to record just from a small area because we know the brain is a dynamic system. But also we need to do that at the same time at adequate enough resolution. We need that method to be scalable into millions of patients because otherwise we don't have enough time to collect the data. And then lastly, what is the killer app that encourages people to get that implant and scale to the millions? So I think our particular approach to cover those last two areas at least is to utilize the blood vessels. So we're trying to get the intracranial signal, because the skull seems to be a very pesky thing, and actually get that rich signal without having to perform an open brain surgery, thereby being inherently scalable. Now, I don't have the answers to the killer app, and I'd love for this group to find that out. But just to illustrate how we're doing this, we go through, we enter through the jugular vein, and there's a natural highway that goes inside into the brain. So we take a transcatheter approach. There are many, many labs across the world and sites that can perform these procedures compared to open brain surgeries. So you can imagine this lovely catheter snaking up into the brain, and you're able to record intracranial signals without having to perform an open brain surgery. So there are thousands of sites that can perform this particular procedure, but only hundreds of sites that can actually do functional neurosurgery. So we're leveraging the existing infrastructure to be able to record high-quality signals at scale. So we don't have to build new hospitals. This is existing infrastructure. So we think this is going to be inherently scalable. So call to action here is, what is the minimum amount of and category of data do we need? At which scale do we need to collect this data? And also at the same time, it's not only about collecting the data, but what kind of quality and category of data do we want to be collecting to model the thing that you and I are all after, is cognition. And if that holds to be true, then what is the killer app for our patients to actually decide to receive this technology because it's going to provide benefit for them? Then this flywheel happens, and we truly get into this decade where we actually get to curate this data for the first time to answer this question empirically. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, questions? Yes.
What's your, maybe speculatively speaking, roadmap to go into smaller vessels, and if it's required at all from your perspective?
So, of course, we want to record from as many regions of the brain as possible. So you want to go deep as well as wide. So luckily for us, blood vessels go deep and wide. So our first port of call is to go to the dural sinuses, but in the long-term roadmap, of course, we have plans to go through all of these places because ultimately that's what you're going to need.
Thank you.
We have time for another one. Quick one.
Just one over there.
Okay. Shout it out until I come to you.
Can you say a little bit more about that? Like, are there physical limits on?
Of course.
Okay. So what are they?
Yeah, I mean, it's literally vessel size. We want to do this in the next 10 years. So it means smaller and smaller you get, more difficult it becomes to manufacture those devices. And
is it just more difficult to manufacture, or you need some fundamental materials?
Yeah,
breakthrough?
So we actually mapped this out. There are many vessels that go all the way across the brain that is still in the millimeter scale, so in the mesoscopic scale. So manufacturing things at this size is feasibly possible, but there are, we're not going into venules per se, but that comes back to the question of what category of information that are we after. We think the functional representation that is collectible through micro-ECOG array, that range, that mesoscopic range, is what we use to study complex behavior and cognitions in neuroscience. So I think that showcases that's enough. Okay. So we want to target that to be realistic.
Sorry, back to your last point, what is the evidence that doing micro-ECOG or ECOG is enough to study cognition?
Yeah, so, I mean, the complex cognitive capability has been decoded through micro-ECOG, for example, actually even macro-ECOG. So speech production, of course, is not cognition per se, but it's a very complex and dynamic process. So you can decode literally from real time from patients, but also you can do that with spike data. But the fact of the matter is the same categorical information has been able to be decoded through ECOG.
My understanding of that stuff is very low bit. Basically, it's pre-categorization, let's say, you have 10 categories you have to code. But real decoding is like reconstruction constructing in a very high entropy distribution, and mind that first how we do that from a right construction. So that is a very important information.
Yeah.
So I think that's something to think about.
Yeah, no,
like-
I totally agree. I don't think this is the ultimate approach to fully create the digital twin of the brain per se, but at the functional level of functional things you want to decode, I think we're already able to decode very complex things and study complex behavior and cognitions through ECOG approaches. So I think the evidence is there, the proof's in the pudding.
Thank you so much. Awesome.
Thank you.